Good morning. Welcome to, I guess we'll call this Moscona's Memos. That's what I used to call my newsletter when I used to do it typed out and sent out to thousands of people. We've converted it to video, as you know, and we've been endeavoring to be a little bit more consistent. And here we are. So it's Friday, and we're moving quickly through this year. It's the middle of July already, and a lot of stuff's going on. You know, we've moved kind of a little bit beyond COVID, which is good, and have a couple thoughts about a few little things I wanted to cover today. Our my whole theme is spirituality, morality, and current topics. Well, what is the most current topic right now? Well, it's getting the kids back to school. And we had a little hiccup here in our diocese in the last few days where the governor's office promulgated some rules about back to school. And then our diocese promulgated their version of those rules, and it resulted in some confusion. And I don't want to get into all the details, but what I do want to talk about is one of the things that came forward was this idea that we would segregate the children that were vaccinated from those that are not vaccinated. I want to talk about that from a spiritual morality standpoint. First of all, is it moral to segregate the kids? It's an easy question. You know, well, we don't want to. There's a difference between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. Answer me this question. If you were vaccinated, aren't you supposed to now be immune from the virus? If that's so, then the vaccinated kids are not at risk from the unvaccinated kids. And if the parents send the kids unvaccinated, aren't they assuming whatever risk, as small as it might be, and they're not vaccinating for personal reasons, whatever it is? It could be religious, that the testing of the vaccine was done with aborted fetuses, and they have a spiritual problem. You don't know what the person is, but you shouldn't judge them. And that's where the spirituality part of this comes in. It is a spiritual choice as to how we react to things in the world. So, for example, if something happens to us, we might not be able to control what happens to us, but we certainly can control our reaction to it. And the way we react to it, a lot of time, will be a function of our own spirituality. It may be whether we are deeply vested in that issue from a spiritual perspective, or that we're not deeply vested from a spiritual perspective in that thing. So let me give you an example of exactly what I'm talking about, okay? So somebody comes to me and says, look, I am not going to participate in this activity because I believe that the context of it is not moral. Let's say it's using a Ouija board, okay? A lot of people in the world don't see anything wrong with a Ouija board, but another lot of people see it as occultic. In other words, it has a negative spiritual dimension to it, okay? So I send my kids to a party and the parents decide they're going to let them use a Ouija board. Well, I don't want my kids to be subjected to that. How do I react to that? Well, I can simply say, I'd prefer if my kids were not invited to participate in that particular game. Let them do something else. Oh, it's not good enough. And if it gets into a negative thing, you just pull your kid away. Why? Because if it's a spiritual thing, you want to protect your kids spiritually. Because the purpose in life is to get yourself and your family to heaven. And if we don't have that as our purpose in life, why are we here? That's the big question. So in the context of sending our kids to school, I know for a fact that a lot of families got very comfortable homeschooling because they pulled the kids out of school because virtual learning was going on, and when they were invited back, they had a choice and they decided to continue virtually. Why? It had nothing to do with getting the vaccine. It had to do with them getting comfortable instilling their own values into their children. And that's an important thing for a lot of people. And so consequently, what we do is we focus on our children and trying to instill in them values that reflect a morality that builds up their spirituality. So one of the things that as we get closer and closer to school is we need to realize the dignity of each of these children as an individual and protect the integrity of their spirituality and not let them get caught up in whatever the political ramifications of this back to school thing decides to or winds up being. With that having been said, I'd like to just invite everybody as we move toward the weekend to take the time to read the readings for the services, Mass in a Catholic perspective this weekend, and reflect on them. Spend some time pondering your relationship with your Lord. And in that regard, determine to invest in your relationship with God. Why is that important? Because it's sowing and reaping. The more you sow, the more you get. And you get exactly what you sow, and you get in greater proportions. That's scriptural. And so what I like to tell people is if you sow good things, good words, good attitude, good relationship into others, it'll come back to you in a positive way. And if it doesn't, then last week's gospel was very clear, where Jesus said he sent them out 2 by 2, and if you go to a house and they don't accept you, just shake the dust off your feet and move on. Don't argue with people. Just do the right thing. Be a positive influence in people's lives. I was reading a book, I'm actually still reading, it's called $1 Million Habits. And one of the habits that they tell you to do is to always put a smile on your face. Always have a good attitude. Always be friendly. And in doing so, then the result of that winds up being that you get that back in greater proportions. And it's to be successful in life, we have to understand that we are mind, body, and spirit. So our physical body is just a physical body. Our spirit exists within our body. Our mind is the bridge between our spirit and our body. And so sometimes we need to quiet our minds, block out everything, maybe turn the light off, turn all the noise off, and just ponder and find a place to bridge the gap between our bodies and our spiritual dimension. And when we do that, we become closer to God. I believe that God speaks to us in the silence deep inside of us in a way that allows us to feel God's presence, maybe not physically articulating in our ear, but spiritually articulating in our spiritual dimension, in our heart. And when we do that, we can hear God clearly directing us away from bad and toward good. And when we do that, He'll sometimes put things in our life that make it clear what He wants us to do. On a later show, I may talk a little bit about why, from a Catholic perspective, we stay away from, Freemasons and Masonic lodges and stuff like that. It's not the purpose of this, but to the extent that a lot of people that get involved in those organizations do it from a fraternal perspective. They think it's a way to make friends and community. As you get up into the Masonic orders, the purpose of the Masonic orders become clearer and clearer to those. And that's where the hiccup comes with the Catholic Church. It's not the basic, it's like joining a fraternity in college. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, you're just trying to have a fraternity. But if you're using it in a way to negatively affect other people's religion or spirituality, then that's where the hiccup comes. And I don't want to get into that right now. That's for a whole nother talk. What I want to do is I want to pump you up for the weekend and say, look, as we move into the weekend, spend some time with our Lord's Bible, scripturally, in prayer, get close to Him. And at the end of the weekend, hopefully when we start on next Monday will be the best day of the week, because we'll be starting fresh, renewed, and from a good perspective. With that, I hope this was just a positive influence in your life and something to reflect on with our kids. And until next week, God bless till our next video. Let me ask you to do me a favor. Would you please subscribe to my channel? And would you please like the video? And would you please share the video? If you'll do that, then we'll continue to put this forward. Thank you. God bless.